I've been out shooting with this classic Fujica 35mm camera. I'm trying this film, Fomapan Classic 100 ISO. I've never tried it before, so it's going to be a bit of an adventure. The first thing, of course, I've got to do is to get the film out the camera. There's a button on the bottom which releases the clutch inside, and then I turn this, and you can probably hear the sound of the film winding back into the can. Okay, that's done. Okay, so I open the back of the camera, I lift the rewind knob, the catch springs open, and here you can see we have the film completely wound back into the cassette. The next stage of the operation is to get the film out of this cassette into this tank. This is a Paterson System 4 35mm tank. What I've got to try and do is get the film onto this reel. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to put my thumbnails inside here. I'm going to pull apart the cassette. The top and the bottom will probably ping off at that point. I've got to take out the cassette, film from this cassette. Then using my scissors, I'm going to cut the end of the film fairly square, and then I'm going to feed it on to this reel. Now this reel has got two prongs here. You feed the film underneath until they go through past the ball bearings here, and at that point, if you do this sort of motion, you should actually wind the film automatically onto the developing reel. When it's when we've got to the end, we can either rip the film off, or it's secured by a piece of tape, so that isn't a problem, or I can cut it again with my scissors. Then I have to reassemble the tank. So I take the reel, which has got the black stem inside it, I put that inside the tank, and I put the lid back on, and I make sure it's perfectly secure. So it's not very visual because I've got to do it in complete darkness. So I'm actually going to do it inside this black bag. It has armholes and a large aperture on this side so that I can put the tank in. So I'm just going to cut to the chase and restart the video when that's done. So the film's in the tank. Actually, that turned out to be a little bit more challenging than I'd hoped for. What you've got to remember is that inside this cassette, well, the remains of this cassette, there are over 5 foot of actual film. So this is bound pretty tight inside here, and I don't know if it's the make of the film, I don't know if it's the thickness of the film, but it was particularly hard to get onto the reel. So much so that at the end of the reel it's simply wrapped around a couple of times, so I'm going to have to bear that in mind when I do my developing. But that one's for tomorrow. This is enough for tonight. Okay, time to develop the film. I'm going to be using Ilfocell 3 Developer, Ilfostop Stop Bath, and Ilford Rapid Fixer. The scientist in me is beginning to panic a bit now because I've not used this particular film developer before. So I'm using a camera that I've not used before, and a film that I've not used before, and a developer that I've not used before. If it's fine, I need to record everything. If it doesn't work, then I have to try and work out which one of the variables isn't working for me. But consistency is the most important thing. The Ilfosol I'm going to dilute to 1:9. I'm going to store it in the pot that I've marked Film Developer, and this is the beaker that I'm going to use to transfer the chemicals backwards and forwards. And when I get onto the stop bath, I have the same, and so on for the fixer. So I'm very careful not to mix up my chemicals, so I'm not going to contaminate the mixture. Okay, first thing to do is to do the dilution. This I'm diluting 1 to 9, this I'm diluting 1 to 19, and this one I'm developing 1 to 4. Simple maths, so I'm just going to get on and do that. If you look up these things on the internet, you will see that there are different techniques used for agitating the liquid when it's in the tank. Actually, as long as it works, it doesn't matter what you use. But you do need to be consistent. So the way that I do this is the way that I've been doing it since I learnt to develop films, which was back in 1975. So I will agitate, to say I will invert the tank for 30 seconds. Then I will firmly place the tank on the table to dislodge any air bubbles, and then I will repeat the inversion for 5 seconds at the end of each subsequent minute. Now I've looked it up on the guidance, and apparently this is going to take a 5-minute process. So I will do the first minute, then I will cut to the end, because once you've seen it once, you've seen it. Okay, so I've got a big clock on my computer, and I'm going to start the clock as soon as I start pouring. Okay, that's the first 30 seconds. As I said earlier, this is a Paterson System 4 tank, which is not the latest tank, but I actually prefer this design. The System 5 have a much wider lid on it, and I find, for me, that doesn't work quite as well because I get more leakage. Absolutely up to you. Again, if it works for you, it works for you. 55 seconds. And now I wait until the next 55 seconds. And so on till this film is completed at 5 minutes. Okay, I'm now at 4.5 minutes. I'm going to take the lid off, and I start pouring the developer back into its beaker about 15 seconds before the development time is up. So that will be about now. And by the time I've done that, the 5 minutes is up. Now I'm going to pour the stock bath in immediately afterwards. And I'm going to give it a bit of an agitation. I'm getting slight leaking now, but that's only to be expected. I'm going to leave that for a moment. The developer is slightly alkaline. The stock bath is slightly acidic. So the stock bath acts to immediately stop the development, but also, because it's now neutralising the chemicals, it's also prolonging the life of the fixer. And actually, the fixer, because it's only diluted 1 to 4 for a film, is the most expensive part. So if we can prolong the life of the fixer, then we're going to save ourselves some money. I'm now coming up to about a minute on the stock bath. And time to pour that back into the beaker. And I'm now going to wait till about 15 seconds past, about now, and I'm going to pour in the fixer. Okay, put the lid on, and I'm going to agitate the fixer. Actually, at this stage, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour a little bit off the fixer, just a tiny amount, to show you something else. You will recall that when I took the film out of the canister, I said I was going to cut the leader off it. Well, here's the leader, And the reason I've cut this is I can test the effectiveness of the fixer on this piece of film leader. So I'm just going to put that into the piece of fixer which I have taken off, and you will see very quickly that now the film has gone clear. So effectively, on an unexposed piece of film, it would have worked already. I'm not that confident, so I'm going to leave it for another couple of minutes. But this little clip test is actually a very good way of making sure your fixer is working properly, because if it doesn't clear within a minute, either you've mixed it up wrong or you've got exhausted fixer. While I'm waiting, let's just have a bit of sponging here. So now this has been in the developer for 2 minutes. I'm going to give it 1 minute more, then I'm going to take it downstairs and I'm going to put it under the tap to wash it. Now, in in the 1970s, when I learnt to do this, the way to wash things was to get a hose from the tap and put it into the tank and let it run for about 20 minutes. That uses an awful lot of water. So these days I prefer to use the technique where I fill, agitate and dump the water out of the tank about 20 times. Although it's more work for me, it saves a considerable amount of water, and I think that's probably a good idea. Right, so now this is coming up to 3 minutes, and I'm going to take what's left downstairs to give it a wash. Back in a moment. Okay, it's been washed. Here's the moment of truth. As you can see, it's slightly wound round the developing reel, and you can see there the difficulty I was talking about of getting the film onto the reel. Let me put my, I have to wash it again after this. Let me put my whiteboard up. So it'll be easy to see. So here you can see that I have a variety of exposures. I would call that a success. Looking at the edges, it's developed very uniformly. There's no fogging. Take the rest of the film off. As I said, this film is about 5 foot long, so it needs handling with particular care at this point. Care which I'm really not giving it because I'm trying to show what I've done. Okay, so now I'm going to hang that up. I'm going to weight it at both ends, and I'm going to weight it the old-fashioned way with a couple of pegs, and then when the film is dry, then I'm going to scan it and then show some pictures from it. So here we have the last 4 negatives on the film. The next stage is to rephotograph them using my camera and the light box, and then I'm going to put them into Affinity Photo, invert them, and we'll see what we get. The problem I have with this is that although these look quite sharp and punchy as negatives, when I put them onto the computer, they tend to lose their contrast. So it needs a quite bit of manipulation to actually get anything out of it. But I'm going to try and do these 2 negatives and see what they look like. Let's give it a go. And there you have it. It's not bad. I'm quite pleased with it. I would be more pleased if I was doing it through an enlarger, but that's the next step. At the moment I don't have space for an enlarger, so I've got to create some space, get myself an enlarger, and then go back to using more traditional methods for my photography. We'll see when that happens. Hopefully it will happen soon. But for the moment, that's developing a black and white film. How easy is that?